of a technology of sea glider might be for cities like that. I live on a tiny island, by the way, and I'd love to have a sea glider close to my front door. Right, now we're going to take a complete corner turn for our next spotlight session, which is looking at the outlook for autonomous vessels, so from sea back to land. And I'd like to introduce you to Andrew Grant, the head of intelligent mobility at Bloomberg New Energy Frontiers. Andrew, NEF, I should have said. The stage is yours.
Right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for having me. It's a privilege to be here. I'm going to spend a bit of time today talking about some of the work that we do and some of the thought we put into coming up with an outlook for where different industries might go in the future. So we've been spending a lot of time looking at electric vehicles, and we've been, for over a decade now, putting together a big annual report that summarizes all our findings in a tightly packaged 250-page report. And every year we've kind of added a little bit more complexity to that report and added more detail. And these are the latest results. I can get into this a bit more afterwards if you'd like to come find me and chat a bit more about this. But really, some of the initial high-level findings, we're on track for about 39 million electric passenger cars sold globally by 2030. And there's very different regional stories as to how this unfolds. It accounts for about 40% of the global market, but you see markets like China having a much higher electric vehicle adoption, and other markets having a much lower electric vehicle adoption. And we're not the only people that are looking at this. There's other entities that are trying to develop a view on where the world might go and where the transportation market might go in the future. And everybody does seem to agree that there will be more electric vehicles, and there's various different viewpoints on exactly how many. But that's only part of the story. And I'm here really today to talk about some of the other big differences in this report. So in our report, you end up with a lot more electric vehicles by 2050 than a similar report that OPEC utilizes. But really, part of the story is the electrification side, and another equally interesting, and in some cases more interesting side, is just how you go about thinking about the number of vehicles that you need to meet mobility demand in the future. So the way these outlooks generally work is you use this historical relationship between the GDP per capita and the passenger kilometers that vehicles travel on the roads. The dotted line there is GDP per capita, and the solid lines are the passenger vehicle kilometers on the roads. And they tend to go up over time. They don't go up in a kind of one-to-one relationship, but there is a pretty strong correlation. You can account for some differences, like the working age population, which varies by market. More working age people, you're going to get more people driving. Also, if you have more densely urban populations, you're probably going to need fewer vehicles because it makes public transit, buses, more of a necessity. But that only counts for part of the differences in some of these outlooks. Really, there's something that's really manipulating and changing the view from outlook to outlook, and that's how you think about shared and automated mobility. So in order to incorporate this in our outlook, what we've done is we just start with the basics. We count up everything that we can. What you're looking at here are deployments of robotaxis by Waymo, Baidu, Pony AI, and WeRide, both in their home markets and abroad. And these dots are really starting to expand. Now, not all these projects are equal. You need to kind of have a view of what's real. Sometimes the press release doesn't really live up to reality. And it's quite hard in some cases to figure out what's really going on in the AI black box. So one way we've gone about that is to look at the operational metrics that you can actually see and measure, that really give us a sign that you've gone from testing and deployment, testing and development to full deployment. So these are things like, first off, are you testing on public roads as opposed to a closed facility? Then we look at, are you actually letting people into these vehicles? This usually starts with companies testing with employees or a kind of guest list. They might waitlist members of the public, but eventually they let all members of the public test and ride in these vehicles. We also look at, are they charging a fare for these vehicles? Are they real businesses that they're trying to make money from, or is this kind of a demonstration project still? Then we look at, of course, have they actually removed the safety driver from the vehicle and it's driving without any human operator in the vehicle? And then finally, we look at, are these vehicles able to operate all hours of the day and in all weather conditions? And in our view, those are the kind of big 5 metrics. And if it meets all of those, that's a fully commercialized, fully deployed robotaxi service. And what we've seen is, as you look at the chart there, it took several years for Waymo's Phoenix operations to tick through many of these milestones and then launch and become a fully deployed robotaxi service. It also took a couple years for them to do the same thing in San Francisco. But as these projects have developed, that gray bar is getting shorter and shorter, and it's taking less time to go from having those initial steps in a market to be actually able to launch a fully commercial robotaxi service. So we're seeing these services iterate a lot quicker. Part of the reason for that, in our view, is the supply chain is developing and becoming a lot more mature. There's more players that are playing a role, that are offering compelling products to develop these types of vehicles, which can drive down costs. So we've had Mobileye doing this type of thing for a while. When you look at the semiconductor side and building out products that they can sell to partially autonomous vehicle developers, but fully autonomous vehicle developers as well. And it's also attracted some of the kind of the big boys in the chipping world. So Qualcomm and NVIDIA also with a range of products that are being provided to level 2 and level 2 plus level 3 partial automation services, but also those level 4 and level 5 products. And it's not just them as well. Tesla are building out their own thing. Horizon Robotics, Black Sesame out of China, also building products for level 3 and level 4, and a range of other automakers and chip makers are looking into this as well and investing considerable resources to build out a crucial component of the AV supply chain. But it's also on the operational, these chips are getting a lot better, a lot more powerful. There's no set amount of kind of computing power that you necessarily need to be able to have a robotaxi function, but you're looking at the latest chipsets all having kind of north of 500 terawatt hours, tera operations per second with capability. And then when you stitch those together, you're getting a much higher level actually in the vehicle by stitching together a few of these chipsets. But then on the operational side, we're also seeing a lot more maturity in the supply chain. Robotaxi companies have partnered with automakers in the past to adapt these vehicles and roll them out in their test networks. But really on the ride-hailing side, the fleet management side, and those key operational areas, we're seeing a lot more players come in and be involved in these services and working with a wider array of partners. You're looking at how Waymo kind of started with its early operations, doing a big chunk of the operations, but have brought in more partners to expand as they scale up. And while this isn't going to necessarily be the strategy of every robotaxi developer, it does seem to be the case that as operations scale, you need more people on the ground, more local expertise to be able to expand these businesses. And we've seen that with some of the recent announcements around who is taking on which parts of the supply chain and which responsibilities within that. And a big part of that is owning the vehicles. At the end of the day, somebody does have to own these vehicles. So we've started to see billion-dollar deals for financing, stacking up financial instruments in order to be able to own, insure, and manage these big fleets of robotaxis. And I do think they will be big fleets. Something that often gets mentioned is the potential for robotaxis to be an Airbnb type model where it is a person's private car and they get put back into the robotaxi fleet and moved around in that way. That's not really how Airbnb itself works. Yes, there's a lot of hosts on Airbnb that supply properties for the platform. But really, when you look at what that means in terms of the number of properties that are actually available, it's less than half that are these kind of one-unit hosts. And then when you look at that a little bit further, it's really people that are only putting one property on their site, and it might not be their primary residence or letting out their personal vehicle. So I think there's still, as the Airbnb model shows, there's a lot of people that have an investment in kind of an additional utility that they are renting out on this platform. So I do think there will be a need for big fleet owners of these robotaxis and these types of vehicles. We also look at the utilization of these vehicles and how they're actually being deployed. So trip counts have been going up. You're looking at data from Waymo in California, and ticking up quite nicely with a couple bumps here and there. There was a protest in June that caused the service to shut down a bit, so that's the reason for that little decline there. But the trip counts in general are going up. The number of trips each robotaxi is doing per week, per day, per month are also ticking up. But what's been quite interesting is just how these utilization patterns have, to date, mirrored what we are seeing from human drivers. So there's still quite a lot of travel with these robotaxis without any passenger in the vehicle. This is called deadhead or empty miles. And it's a metric that still just over half of the kilometers are actually completed with a passenger in the vehicle. The rest of the time, it's circling and looking for trips or looking for riders, traveling to riders to pick them up. So there's still some issues to work on to get the most out of these types of services, but we do expect that to improve over time. And something else we expect to increase over time also is the number of passengers that you're able to incorporate in a vehicle. It still averages about 1.5 passengers per vehicle at the moment. And those kind of assumptions are what, those kind of data points lead us to our outlook, which I won't go through the entire modeling process that we used to get there, but on the whole, robotaxis and shared vehicles play a bigger role in providing the types of kilometers to passengers rather than a much smaller share of the total fleet size. So by 2040, in our outlook, robotaxis are 7% of global kilometers, but just 1% of the fleet due to their higher utilization rates. And that can vary by region. There's some markets that are going to automate a lot quicker. This is the outlook for the United States, where you've got 18% of the kilometers being completed in robotaxis by 2040, with just 4% of the fleet. But as you'd notice from those charts, there's still quite a lot of gray in there. That's the vehicles that aren't fully automated, the vehicles that have the potential to be partially automated. And this has a significant potential to change the way people travel as well. What you're looking at now is survey data where they asked consumers, are you willing to travel more? Or are you more likely to do more travel if you have a partial automated system helping you and alleviating some of that strain? And there's, for local trips, a moderate increase, but for longer trips, consumers were significantly more likely to travel further if they were aided with a partial automation system. So there's some use cases for this, and it could change the way people travel around. There's also consumer appetite for this type of service, particularly in China, but it's still part of the buying decision in many other markets as well. It's the number one reason that consumers in China would buy a specific brand of vehicle based on the latest survey results that we've got. But consumers don't really know how much to pay for these services. Automakers don't really know how much to charge for these services or the manner in which to charge for them. Some of these are charged as subscription prices, as subscription models, where you pay annually, monthly. Some are lump sum. Some, in the case of BYD, are rolled in with the cost of the vehicle and included in that. So it's not entirely clear just yet how consumers will react to big price swings on your partial automation systems or paying extra for those, or where that settles up. But at the moment, it's an additional revenue driver for many automakers, but not quite all of them. But where this takes us is to our outlook for that big grey chunk of vehicles that I showed previously. And there's significant potential for automation across that space, with partial automation level 2 and level 2+ driving systems being the bulk of sales in the 2020s and 2030s. even out to the late 2030s, still accounting for most of passenger car sales at that level of automation, changing the way people get around. And even out to 2040, you're looking at less than 10% of the total being highly automated level 4 and level 5 vehicles, and as I mentioned, a much smaller share of sales coming in the form of those robotaxis. So with that, I'm out of time. Thank you very much. You have